Going to start. Ladies, thank you for joining us today. We're having this conversation on cyber safety for children. While we've all moved on very quickly into the digital age, our lack of understanding of boundaries of this virtual world versus those that we live in reality are sometimes very, very hard to navigate, both as an adult, as a parent, and certainly for our children too. It's not just relevant, but also imperative that we remain one step ahead of our children in this regard to ensure their safety and map out their value set for online just as we do in their offline lives as well. We have in conversation with us a panel of diverse and very well respected speakers, and I hope that you find their conversation meaningful and the advice that they have for all of us helpful. I'd like to introduce you to them. We have with us Dr. Karnika Seth. Dr. Seth is an internationally acclaimed cyber law expert, a lawyer and expert on information technology laws. She's practiced in the Supreme Court of India. Her contribution has been widely recognized by the corporate world as well as international organizations like UNICEF, where she's consulted on ways and means to ensure cyber safety for children in the virtual world. She's an acclaimed authority, a policymaker, and an advisor to the Indian government and committed to the cause of cyber safety, women empowerment, and children's right protection in India. She's a managing partner of Seth Law Associate Law Firm and has founded an NGO, FIRE, that's been dedicated to spreading cyber awareness in India. Dr. Seth, thank you so much for joining us today.
So much. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure being here.
Thank you. We have with us also Nirali Bhatia. Nirali is a cyber psychologist, psychotherapist, and a certified internet addiction therapist. We really need those. She's a TEDx speaker and has been quoted in various articles in leading newspapers and regularly appears on several news channels. She's also the director for We4Web Cybersecurity and founded an anti-cyberbullying organization called CyberBUP, which stands for Cyberbullying Awareness, Action and Prevention. Welcome, Nirali.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me.
I'd next like to introduce Sebastian Edistri. Sebastian is a security and fraud investigation professional who's had 40 years of relevant experience in security, investigation, digital forensics, and training. He's a certified fraud examiner, computer hacking forensic investigator, and a master trainer for Interpol on technology crime investigations. He's closely associated with safety and security of children in the digital world. He is a consultant trainer with International Center for Missing and Exploited Children for law enforcement training on investigation of computer-facilitated crimes against children. Thank you so much for joining us, Sebastian.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And last but not the least, we have with us Leena Kejriwal, who's the founder of Missing Link Trust. She's a photographer and installation artist who's based out of Bombay. And since 2015, she's been working with single-minded focus to create meaningful and impactful methods and programs for prevention of trafficking. She's received multiple awards and accolades for her unique artistic take on this grave social issue, and has also been the founding chairperson for YFlow Kolkata. Leena, thank you so much for being with us here today and to help plan this and moderate the session, and we're very much looking forward to this conversation. I leave it to you.
Thank you, Karishma. Thank you so much for all the lovely. And thank you, everybody, for being here. And thank you once again for giving us this platform, because it's really important that we reach in platforms like the YFlow to really talk about the issue. It's about really bringing it out of the closet and out of the minds and into the actual doing of how we can prevent and how we can safeguard our children. So before I start, I just want to talk a little bit about the Missing Link Trust. Missing Link Trust started actually as a public art program of yours truly. But since then, we've really moved ahead and we've become an award-winning organization that uses the power of innovation, education, and empowerment to prevent sex trafficking. We strongly believe that awareness equals to prevention, and we have very innovative tools like our award-winning Missing Game. We have neural chatbots, we have an interactive digital comic, and very diverse methodologies to fulfill our vision to create a world which is safe for children. Recently, we have been working on the Missing Anti-Trafficking program, which we have rolled out in schools. Last year, we had it as a CAS program in one IB school, which is a very successful program. And this year, we are going to be looking at rolling it out in multiple more, because it's a very unique program, because it's an immersive experience which takes the students through the stages of becoming aware about sex abuse, exploitation, and trafficking, evaluate the causes, and question the rising figures. And finally, they themselves make informed decisions, create solutions using design thinking and art for social good. So we have seen great value in this program, and we're fleshing it out further. Now under COVID, we have been really focusing on the cyber safety module, which falls within the MATP. And that's why we have experts like Sebastian, Raleigh, and Karnika here, who are also helping us with whatever insights we are getting to put into the program, but for us to have bigger dialogues with the parent community like yours. Today, we are seeing students and children have minimum 8 to 18s have 44.5 hours each day in front of digital screens. That's a figure. That's minimum 7 hours for children. Now, when you say students, you actually mean children. So parents start playing a very pivotal role in how does this young generation and young population navigate this very public space. So for me, it's like as big as simple as when you leave your child on a six-point crossing with 6-wheelers, 8-wheelers, 2-wheelers, 4-wheelers of all shapes and sizes, and not necessarily focused on their tracks, but actually very, very interested in seeing, oh, you have a vulnerable child there, and wanting to take advantage of situations and that space. So as a parent, I'm saying, even if you have the scenario, would you ever dream that you're going to leave your child there in that space? I'm sure you would never imagine, because we want to keep our children safe in our houses at this moment. So the esteemed panel here are going to be talking to us about cyber psychology, security, and law. And before we move on into the very prevalent concerns and mitigative measures, which all of them are going to share with us, I'm going to take you all into what the basic premise of the internet is, which Sebastian shared with me last time. He says it was built during the Cold War, and it was the basic premise was just connectivity. Security and safety was not its concern. So the very foundation of our internet today is far away from being secure. And how are we going to educate ourselves so that we can educate ourselves and our children to navigate this? So Sebastian, my first question goes to you. What are the important security concerns that every parent should be aware of while introducing their children to the net? Which are the recent trends and which we need to be especially mindful of?
Yeah, could you please let me share my screen as well?
Yeah, sure. Karishma?
Yeah, as the screen is being shared, let me just start briefly. Yeah, I got it. Trust all of you are able to see this.
Yes.
Okay. So two important things that one should be worried about their child being on the net is net are that one, the data moves both ways. When you connect, your child connects to the internet, data moves to your computer and something goes from your computer as well. And the movement of data from your computer, you may not have any knowledge or you may not have given even permission. So one, that's the thing. And
मेडिकल का सीन हो जाएगा पीपल सारी
and second part,
एक्सपायर होने वाली होंगी अगस्त में रिन्यू
request all of you to please put your
कॉर्पोरेट प्लान
request all of you to please put your systems into mute.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the first one you told, it is a two-way communication, and the challenging part is that you do not know whether what data and how it is going, where it is going. Number two, as very briefly touched by Lena, it is the internet is insecure by design. It was developed during Cold War era, where US and then USSR was vying to get military superiority, and one of the areas was communication. Both being nuclear power, it was the USSR had the capability. USSR had a system of communication system based out of valves, which was protected from nuclear attacks. And US was always worried about it, and they wanted to develop a communication system which is somehow possible to, if not is better than the USSR communication system, but at least able to match something of that sort. So they have developed the internet, crisscrossing the world with multiple connections, and even when there are millions of links available, at least if one link is available, it should be able to communicate. So the thought process,
after my message.
the thought process was that to ensure that there is some sort of connectivity and forget everything else, safety, security,
एक
etc.
mail आया था.
And the third aspect I want to see say to parents is that there is no foolproof security because of this, and criminals freely operate, and they can become anonymous, and without fear and comfort from their house, they can always operate. Then the use of technology tools by children, 3-4 things. One is virus, worms, trojans, etc. The very system what you are going to use could become a part of a botnet or a zombie or a slave computer, which could be used for initiating attacks on your computer. You may not even know that the attack is initiated from your computer, and ultimately law enforcement will catch up with you because it was an origin of attack from your computer was the origin of an attack. Then the next other 3-4 things, children, while all these aspects will be dealt by other speakers in detail, like cyberbullying, sexting, etc., I am more worried about creation of fake profiles, spoofing, anonymizers, etc., and including torrents. The biggest challenge of using all these is that the children are accessible to hardcore criminals. Many times it is hardcore criminals who are on the darknet who are going to help these children in using most of these tools, because the children themselves may not get a proper education or training to use this. However, because the children are looking into some of their peers and they're considering these criminals are their trainers or gurus, however, their aim is to make these children vulnerable and use them for subsequent criminal acts later, etc. So these are the initial thoughts I have about the parents being careful about introducing their children to the internet.
Yeah, thank you, Sebastian. That's like quite a very rigorous and very, very pointed takes tools by the parents. I do hope you all got that. I'm going to progress to beyond in basic safety into certain scenarios which we are seeing today on the net. Like suppose we're talking about the boys' locker room incident. For those who do not know, the incident involved the infamous Instagram chat group where students exchanged photos and lewd comments about their female classmates. Many conversations showed members talking about sexually assaulting their classmates. While this has happened to children from class 11 and 12, it's not specific to that age group. We have seen younger children also being part of certain such confession pages in the past. So my next question goes to Nirali. Nirali, this isn't the first time that we're seeing this. We've seen a rise of such incidents on the net. How and why are children engaging in such conversations online? And do share your insights into why is this happening and what can parents do?
So as you very correctly pointed out that this is not the first time that we are seeing that, children are engaging into these kind of behaviors. Let's understand that children by default are explorative in nature, and particularly things that are taboo, things that we parents try to cover up, they are going to be more attracted towards it. Now with internet, what happens is they get access early on. See, there's a right time to share or to indulge into certain informations. Now unfortunately, with internet access being available to as young as like from 2-3 years onwards, children are exposed to internet, and by the time they are 8 and 9, they're quite well versed to explore it themselves. So because of its whole nature of giving information in abundance, plus also in terms of the exposure of the content that children today are, accessing. It is no, so the whole idea of sexual communication or sexual thoughts, this whole of this comes from the society. It's not something that the child is, right from beginning, he's being inquisitive about it. No, at a certain age, the inquisitiveness increases. And hence when, so the factors that would lead to this is, yes, amongst the peer, if there is discussion, the kind of content they are being exposed to on internet. Like if you look at today, the entertainment zone, each of this entertainment, whether it is a comedy series, whether it is a movie, whether it is a series on Netflix, Amazon, all of them have some or the other ways of exposure to sexual acts. but the way it is displayed and the way we adults around react around it is what really pushes children to explore this, to indulge into this a little early age on, because it makes them feel smarter. It also gives them that edge that yes, internet's anonymity, which every child believes, also helps them understand and or believe that okay, I can discuss it over here without me being known that look, I am doing this. So these are the areas where kids are going to get drawn to it, and hence the need of appropriate time and age appropriate sex education, so that
That's
we're killing the curiosity of this whole fact. So a lot of times parents come asking me what is the right age when we should expose them, or when we should educate them about sex education.
So we are talking about some really, really lewd and some really, really heinous stuff happening. It's not just plain curiosity. So you're talking about a behavior which is just you wouldn't expect children to get into, and it's increasing.
So that's the whole irony, that we don't expect. Like I said, it's the content that children are today exposed to. You show me one particular the content that is available on internet, it is abuse free, or it is free of any kind of gesture which is sexual in nature. The way objectifying is happening, it is going to invite this kind of curiosity early age on for these kids.
I think there is lots of content which is not just that anyway. There are many people who are putting out conscious
Yes.
content. I know there has been an increase. There has been a shift where there is conscious content also happening.
Right.
But I think what you're talking about is actually content which is objectifying more
Yes.
and probably has more connotations to sexual.
Yeah. So
content.
I'll give you from a case that I had handled. I'll share that example with you all. So this was again that was locker room episode that happened, same class 9 and class 10 children. Now the victim who had approached me in terms of, so he was being shown this content by his friend. It was a normal pornographic clip, but this child was not okay. He did not like it, and he was really taken aback, shocked, and also in guilt that what is he being exposed to. But the counter effect of this was that because this one child reacted in such a fashion, many of his friends, they teamed up together and they said, okay, if he's scared of this much, let him show us more. Let us show him more. And this
Actually,
is how
you're talking about content which is actually more X-rated than normal content.
so this is how it gets. Also, it's this whole nature of internet which allows us to kind of explore our deepest darkest desires also, which in a social conduct we have learned and we have trained to suppress. We have trained to actually manage it and shove it up. But internet does allow us to explore this, open it up. So that's how it takes form of such extreme conversations.
Yeah. So
And,
I'm going to
extreme-
more extreme conversations to Karnika now.
Yeah.
Karnika, when does the conversation cross the line? Just beyond curiosity and okay, you do some things to some friends. But you have had cases in the legal spaces where now even the boys' locker room went into the legal court.
Right.
So when does a conversation cross the line? Can you give us insights into what makes a conversation legal and illegal? If it is illegal, what are the punishments the children can be meted out? And can you tell us examples of other such challenges and incidences that have played out dangerously?
Very pertinent question, Lena. I think it's very difficult for person who doesn't understand or know the law to actually even contemplate where does the line transgress, and one something becomes illegal from the point of view of whether a child is a perpetrator or a victim. So now children are attacked online or targeted online mostly by their peers, but it could also be by somebody who's anonymous who is known to the kid but is an adult. So in that background, if instances like boys' locker room are just one of the instances of how children can be approached, often we've heard of grooming activities where a stranger, could be a peer also, contacts the child and usually through a fake email like ID, or it could be a fake social media account, and starts talking to the child after befriending him, and After that, he shares certain hobbies and interests and, general conversation. And slowly he grooms the child into, introduces some pornography, some sort of the sexual talk, and urging the child to click some, inappropriate pictures and send them those pictures, or even create videos and share those to them. So that's something which is worrying, because that's something which is completely illegal. And grooming and child pornography is a heinous crime, both under the IT Act 2000 and under the POCSO law. It amounts to sexual harassment, and is punishable by up to 5 years or more of punishment, if imprisonment and fine. And when it comes to general talk, if somebody is talking and if he starts becoming, for example, abusive, if it's not sexual talk, but if it's abusive, or if it's harassment, expressing one's opinion is one thing. You can obviously share your opinion on a certain topic or any subject. But when you start criminally intimidating the other, threatening, creation of a fear that you will cause damage or some kind of an injury to the person, whether it is in terms of property, or whether it is in terms of his reputation, or his mental psyche, any kind of attack like that becomes a transgression of line, and that becomes illegal. Again, punishments would be like 2 years or more, in criminal intimidation. And if it's defamation, it's also, something criminally liable as well as civilly liable. So both the things are there. Now, that's what we have to see, that it should not cross the line, as in you are free to express yourself, but you should not start harassing the other person, which culminates into stalking, which culminates into sextortion, which culminates into criminal intimidation, defamation, or even trolling for that matter. You can see those activities are happening. So you're free to express, but express in a manner which is legal, which is not threatening, nor creating a fear, nor damaging anybody's reputation. That's what one needs to keep in mind.
So at the moment, we've touched about certain scenarios like toxic content, like Nirali spoken about porn, you've spoken about other elements, which we will come into even further when we talk about grooming of children. But I want to take you all towards a space which all three of you recently spoke about, was gaming, online gaming. You all spoke about how it's toxic and it's also being addictive. So video games today, we've seen a great increase in video game playing today, and it's now also become online rooms where children are no more playing only with friends. They are also playing with strangers online. And you all have spoken about that being a space which is also very high risk areas, which parents don't even realize that their children are going into spaces. Another behavior pattern which I realized, which came across when I was speaking with you all, was that online gaming space is actually breeding really, really aggressive behaviors into children. It's like letting loose students and children onto a football field without referees. Because here you are, there's nobody to check how you're talking, you're behaving, or, being competitive. And it's actually, that's another, it's actually a psychological space which has to be really addressed, I think, in parenting, about what is the kind of games your child plays and what is his general demeanor after he's played that game. Can you see a change in his behavior pattern? So coming to Sebastian, can you tell us about online gaming and its relation to child safety? What are the measures we can take to ensure the children are safe in online games?
Yeah, online games have been very hit all the more these days, because children are sitting at home and they have nothing else to do. Parents are not allowing to go out, etc. So these online games have become an easy access point for predators into the lives of youngsters. And it is not only child sexual abuse, it is into trafficking, it is into even terrorist activities. So even one of the recently cracked case from one of our investigative agencies, one of the person who was caught and rescued, incidentally, it did not catch much of attraction in the newspapers, etc. This boy he used to play a lot of games. It used to be single games. Subsequently, it became collaborative games. And collaborative game provide a lot of opportunity to connect with strangers. While the name may be sounding very familiar, many times these are people, hardcore criminals, part of the game, basically. So this boy at the age of 12 happened to connect with one such collaborator who started talking about this boy's interest towards assault rifles, basically. So he was very, very happy to look into rifles and things like that. And AK-47 was probably one of the best shooting machine he thought was that he should possess, etc. And the grooming, how they do is online multiplayer video games. It connects directly to the potential victims. And initially, it's start with the conversation, and gradually it build up into trust. And the criminals pose to the children as some very, very young people or something initially, and with maybe some false stories of hardship and self-loathing, etc. These are all hallmarks of the initial connection that they try to connect with these children. And then their goal is ultimately, if it is a child sexual abuse, it is their goal is ultimately to make children share sexually explicit images and photos. And once even a half image is shared, then that is being used to blackmail these children to share much, much more sexually explicit material, etc. While I was referring to that other boy that our one of the law enforcement agency had rescued, this boy was this boy got into interesting conversation as a part of one of the games that he was playing online, and then subsequently he was lured into, and he moved from India to Pakistan to ISIS camps in Algeria or something like that. He got training over there, and the whole thing, that he was so much brainwashed that he was willing to do anything. And it was incidentally when he came back to India, what happened, he fell into an accident. He met with an accident, and it was one of the villagers who helped him. And incidentally, at that place, there was only military and police who could set up help with the medical support, etc. And the type of care and the love that they gave to this boy, it literally converted him. And this and the police didn't want to share his details, etc. Otherwise, for almost 5 years, he was out of India, still in teens. And then he could come back, and now the law enforcement is trying to bring back to mainstream life. His parents didn't want him to be coming back, etc.
So
So
which is the demographic? Where do you think children like this, like what is the kind of demographic?
this is it's on Jammu Kashmir area. This particular boy is from.
But
Okay.
it happens through online gaming.
It happened to online training. The child was recruited because now the terrorists wanted to recruit people, suitable people, etc. So what they are trying to initially do is, like for children, assault rifles are very attractive things, basically. Okay, so he's the moment he is given an offer that you will be given live rifle, you can shoot anyone the way you want to kill, and along with indoctrination of what you call hardcore, hardcore criminal activity, etc. So ultimately, he was willing to do anything, and he crossed the border, and then moved into. He was picked up by someone, etc. So these online games are also being used by not only by not only used for child sexual exploitation, even the other areas like terrorism activities also. So parents have to be careful. Maybe like if you ask what all things they should be careful, parents preferably should keep a track at least maybe once in a week. No, there will be so many logs, etc. on most of the games. What are the chats that are going on? Children may or may not delete many chats, but at least from the chat conversation, they should be able to pick up like, is the child going in the right direction? Simply playing a game, or somebody is trying to mold him into something else.
Sure.
That's what they should be looking into.
Thank you. Thank you, Sebastian. Nirali, I want to ask you the next question. There's concern about the kind of content that the games publish. There's violent content, virtual sex games, embedded pornography, like you have in the Grand Theft Auto game. I mean, I don't even know about this. Basically, hypersexualization of content. Parents need to understand how intricately linked the gaming industry has become with the pornographic industry per se. How can you tell us the psychological impact of online gaming and addiction of the growing children and their development? In their development?
I'll just share my screen. I've just put 2 slides explaining what are the primary areas of concerns in game, and what are the psychological impacts that are happening.
Yeah.
I'll just share my screen. Just a second. So, like Sebastian sir has already mentioned that yes, games have become hub for grooming children for various activities. Of course, that is one extreme. But besides that, it's also the way these games are designed. If you see the most trending games, all of them are all about violence, and it's extreme. It's the real life like graphic that actually before you consume it, it consumes you. And usually the consumers of these games are young children who are very impressionable age, the mind is, and hence they are far more likely to fall prey to the hazards. So primarily, these are the four major risks in any kind of gaming. The cyberbullying is one of the biggest areas where a lot of bullying, because when these are multiplayer games, when they're playing in teams, we have seen even on football fields there is a rift between two. Why are you not playing this? Why did you not save this goal? But the language in internet, it changes and it takes a complete extreme form. And when it leads to bullying, children do miss out that line that okay, now I am actually bullying. And even like Sebastian sir pointed out that random players also, like I may have added my friend to my tribe of game, then his friend joins, and then his, so eventually there is some random person over there. And the second one is data theft. All these games are free, but what we are paying in return is our data. That is what, like, so all the games, they ask access to your contacts, to your microphones, to your cameras, to your photo galleries. So this is the data that they are thriving on. uh, of course, they are designed to be addictive, and eventually it leads to psychological disorders. I have handled as extreme as acute psychosis, where the bouncers from the hospitals have had to go and pick up the guy because he was unable to manage himself. He had locked himself for 3 odd days, dressed like a sniper. He was playing an American Sniper game, a game called American Sniper, and that's what it was. 3 days, no water, no food, no toilet breaks. He's just sitting like a sniper, and in that act. So this is of course an extreme, but it all begins with the time that we spend and invest into these games. Not only do they have these extreme reactions, but subtly this is what happens. So psychologically, because of the content that is there, it's very gruesome, and it's very real life like graphics, which literally, so for example, you take PUBG, which is the most trending game in the teenagers these days. It's all about killing someone. Now here it doesn't end with one knife stab or a one bullet. You have to continuously hit that person to get some extra points, get some extra life. So it does lead to desensitization. Then it also, this whole speed of the game is about instant gratification. I am bored, I want to play now. So if they don't get the now, that patience virtue is being lost. Constant state of aggression, anxiety, irritation. We've heard n number of cases coming out even in media which have been extreme, where children have reacted in a manner, hurt somebody else because they were deprived of the game. But these are the most common psychological issues that I have listed down over here, which could be the outcome of the games if we have not monitored the time, and if we have not monitored the content of the game that our children are playing.
Okay, thank you so much, Nirali. Karnika, you were also mentioning something to do with online gaming being a part of the current cases, and some things which you come across time and time again. Would you like to share something with in relation?
There have been, first of all, as Nirali was mentioning, I feel that why are the games being made in such a way that they're promoting violence? We should include ethics. When we're talking about ethical education in schools, we should do that, because why are the points being given for killing a person? Why not for saving a person? So you're actually altering the mindsets of people, and the children who are going to be the people of tomorrow, who's going to be really running the whole economy and the country as a whole, represent the country. So what are we feeding into the minds of the children? We should be rather discouraging such games, because we need to tell them about, in earlier times we used to have grandma stories or moral stories. Why is that missing today? I mean, there are lots of ghost stories being told. There are lots of horror and thriller movies being made. Those ethic points and those moral values are somehow dwindling in this society, which we really need to get back on track. That's my first comment on what Nirali just shared. And secondly, you've got seen this blue whale incident which happened again in the gaming segment. So there are a lot of issues pertaining to gaming because of malvertising also. There are lots of wrong pop-ups which are shown to children, and these are could be sexually again explicit, taking them to inappropriate sites, increasing in violence, psychological disorders, definitely their data theft also being one of them. And one of the interesting cases that I had handled, the perpetrator also took away the credit card details of the kid because he would buy tokens and the parent had given him to play online those credit card, and he was misusing the credit card of the parents. And when they realized it, it had already been 2-3 months and huge amounts of money had been spent on that. So that's something which is very worrisome as well. And a lot of times the children are also when they're playing these games, they are collaborating with other children. It has a positive effect to some extent because they are in a lockdown situation. They really need their friends to talk to, and they are playing together. That's the only thing that they can do. However, parents need to use filters. They need to use filters and check the logs of the children, and whether they are being contacted inappropriately, or they're discussing anything which is inappropriate, particularly regarding aggression and violence, or any kind of data which is being taken away, like these financial data of the children.
Yes.
Yeah, that's something which we have to be very careful about.
Thank you, Karnika. Just going back to a little bit about net content on the net and the role of porn. Like, I know, Nirali, you did mention porn, but in a way that there's a lot of content on the net. But to show about the adverse effect of porn on the children today, could you just talk a little about porn with us, a little bit, the effect of porn and what are the side effects and what are the kind of
So I actually had got a chance to do an exclusive study of the effects of cyber porn. So I'll just share a slide where I have listed what are the two major areas of concern when exposed to cyber porn, and which kind of impact it leads to. So can I just get the access to share? Yes. So, your first question to me was also about, the extremity that we saw in the boys' locker room. It also is connected over here, the accessibility to sexual content, to pornographic content is today very, very easy. And if I am, as a child, if I'm very curious and all, I am going to, actually have my own insights, explore it and make my own ideas. So cyber porn being so rampant and so easily available, these are the two major areas of concern. First is, yes, the exposure to pornographic content for the children. And the second one is where they are made victims of child sexual abuse material, which we call as CSAM. So there's no term like child pornography, because it's considered as child sexual abuse material. Now, each one of them has extreme, impact on us. If the child is exposed to pornographic content, not age appropriate, like I mentioned with the case also that I handled, that yes, initial is shock and guilt, fear and shame. But the most worrisome factor is that it skews their views. These are the kids who are in the age of shaping up their own ideas about relationships, about sexual relationships, about their own bodies. So all of that is actually impacted and skewed because of the content that they have been exposed to. The ability to make healthy relationships, communicative relationships also is impacted. Another worrisome area is that the risk-taking behaviors we have seen. So when I was doing this research, largely the age group was 11 to 19. We had seen that the kids whose exposure to this kind of content was more, they were very okay to certain behaviors which we would otherwise find as risky, in terms of sharing their own sexually explicit and personal images with strangers, in terms of sexting, in terms of talking, in terms of being okay with the extreme talks that we saw on the locker room episode as well.
Right.
Plus, this entire space is made in such a fashion that it really gets addictive beyond a point. It is an instant gratification. It's a feel good factor after a point, and which is what could lead to, because we have seen the studies that show us that exposure to sexual content also leads to having release of dopamine, which gives us a sense of pleasure and we want to do it more. So this is about pornographic content. And the next danger, which I mentioned about the children being victims of sexually abusive material, is where unknowingly, if they have let's say, like in cases of games where they've been groomed, and where they have been asked to share their pictures, it could lead to all of this, where their videos are taken, their pictures are used to extort them. So yes, it leads to fear, it leads to a very, very long prolonged low state of mind, which could lead to clinical depression, abnormalities in your future sexual behaviors because of your past experiences. The effect is as similar as any kind of substance abuse or a PTSD, where we were dealing with children who had actually been victims of CSAM. So the impacts are very less are visible on a physical body, but emotionally it just completely changes you, and it takes a very long process to get over these and come back to normalcy of life. So this is not a subject that we can even think of remotely ignoring. Any sign should be taken as a big sign.
So you were
Yeah.
recently even mentioning one grooming case which
Yes.
you recent could. I don't want you to share the details, but it'll be nice for the parents to know what is actually could be happening online.
So the case that came to me was of a child who's I think 14 and turning 15, because she's in class 10. Now, she met somebody on Instagram. This was very new. The interesting part in this case was the child does not have her or his, I mean, she does not have her own device, no personal phone. She used to operate her Instagram from her friend's account, from her friend's mobile, and she had her account over there. She met somebody who immediately, so this child had written in her bio on Instagram that I'm looking forward to doing some sort of modeling work and get on to IPS kind of services. Now, these groomers or these online predators, they actually do a study of who you are, what you like, what you dislike. So these are the areas where they bond. He got in touch with her, giving her a carrot, like, you really have a very pretty face, and I do have a modeling assignment, and I would love to, have you on it. At the same time, he also made her feel so secure by saying, look, right now I know you are under age of 18, you're focused with your studies. He used to help her even with her studies. He would take her studies online. He invested about 4 to 5 weeks into this whole thing, made her believe that he loves her. He's going to marry her someday. And he brought her to that level where she was comfortable in terms of stripping in front of screen. So this is how slowly and gradually the groomers work. They have a very calculated and a very well charted steps that they follow. The first is, yes, they do the homework, and they know which points to connect to your children with. The second one is that they build up that trust and love in the child. The third is this slowly and steadily they withdraw you from your own family. So this girl was also constantly told that, this is our little secret. Don't tell it to anybody. Don't share it. We will tell it at the right time. I will come and talk to your father. These were the promises he used to make. And he's a 31-year-old. So he did not lie about his age in this case, but in many cases, they do lie about their age also. But here he made her feel so nice. So when I was talking to the victim, she kept saying that, I felt loved, I felt wanted, I felt respected. So these are the vulnerabilities. If children find these missing in their environment, in their homes, this could make them vulnerable to these kind of predators. Eventually he led her into going online over a video, and stripping, and he recorded that thing. So
I think this
these
is important. Or sharing today is that these have a
Long term.
recurring and a snowball effect. So you
Right.
really need to, be, very open with your children and have that communication channel always open.
Right.
Because if that is missing, it has led to such a lot of problems, and
Right.
both legal as well as psychological. They can really be leading to a very, very serious result. So
Right.
it's better to have that friendly chat, and that, as Nirali also said and Sebastian said, all these things are important. Respect, or have the dual communication on, and
Right.
interact, share with them what your problems were when you were growing. So those things are all very essential, and also give them some legal awareness. Why? Because they don't know. Like this kid, if she would have known creating a fake account only for doing something like this would not be illegal or legal, she would not have done that. you know
Karnika, while you're at it, why don't you tell us a little bit about POCSO laws and the data protection bill, because that's something which I would love our parents to know a little bit more
Yes.
about.
See, when we talk about POCSO mainly deals with any kind of sexual abuse or attack. It could be physical, it could also be online. So if it is online, the punishments are about 3 years and fine or more under sexual harassment. And if it is something which is child pornography, or creation of any such film or circulation, publication, then that is like child pornography, which is 5 years of punishment, imprisonment or more. And data protection law is being revamped in India and strengthened by the personal data protection bill, which we are anticipating will soon become an enactment and a law.
Right.
And with that happening, it will empower the citizens, and in fact safeguard children, because none of these service providers, none of the apps, for example, that you download for a food or otherwise, would take away information more than is necessary. They will not ask you for your contacts or your photographs or videos, when if you're, for example, asking for a education service or for a food app or some other things, gaming app, for example. So that's something which a child needs to be aware also before he signs on I agree. And usually a parent is the authorized person, a guardian, because the children have legally no right to, I would say they are not entitled to grant consent also, especially if there are children below 18. So that's something, it's not permissible. And the data cannot be misused. So they cannot be taken away. The data unauthorizedly cannot be misused. That it cannot be also sold to any third party. So none of these things will happen. And both government as well as private operators, this act applies to both. And if we are saving any data of the children across, like abroad, in a server which is abroad, even that is protected, because that will be voluntarily only with permission of the guardian. And then coupled with the data protection authority, which is the implementing agency in this case, will be looking into the supervision of the act. So it empowers a kid. And if he doesn't want to use an app, for example, he can choose to delete it. He can choose to say unsubscribe and have his data deleted from that service completely.
It's so important to tell the children their rights, the legal points, and as well as the parents to be aware.
Yes.
Because,
I don't know how many parents would be aware that if when they go and sign up for a service and just click on I agree, they're actually signing a legally valid contract, which is known as a click wrap agreement.
Right.
So any kind of communication like that, and you're granting a consent, is legally admissible in a court of law. In fact, I must also share that whatever screenshots come to you, one of the cases, the parents deleted the entire obscene content which was shared with the child. And that's wrong, because if you don't have screenshots and you've already blocked this whole account, you're not able to prove that this has happened. So lack of evidence is a huge concern. You must save those screenshots, take printouts.
We are sharing all those insights with the whole group now after this. They'll be given proper do's and don'ts that's coming to them. So that will be very well sorted out.
Surely.
So because we're running out of time, I really need to ask Sebastian because he has some very good list of to-dos of how to protect children and warning signs and protective measures, which I really think it's important that he shares with everybody. So I would like Sebastian to get on to that so that we are well within our time.
Could you please allow me to present one screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, please do that. So it's very important, as I told, that there are important strategies for protection, and that
Yeah.
will always help you to protect, or what you call, to ensure
Protect
that
the
criminals
family,
are not
protect
getting
the
into a
children.
machine frequently.
Totally.
So please allow me. Yeah, I got it now.
Yeah.
Something happened. My screen is, yeah, okay. This was the whole screen. So let me just come to the what do you call, the one which is about strategies for protection.
Sure.
So to start with, maybe a licensed software.
Right.
While we procure a computer, maybe like, no, we try to procure it from not a direct vendor, maybe someone who is giving you a machine at a cheaper cost. How he's actually making it cheaper is that he do not use a licensed software. He may be using a pirated software, etc., which makes much easier because there are opportunities for snooping in or maybe advertisements, etc. So always go for a machine that has licensed software. It will also automatically update and patch, and provided you connect to the internet, and it will also help you configure automatically the antivirus and virus firewalls, etc., even if you are not aware how to do it. But those who are aware of configuring it, they should make it much more stronger or harder in a way that you can do it. Then one of the most important thing is password policy. So password is actually a lock to digital world. So if I ask someone like what's a characteristic of a good password, I know almost everyone will say that it should have 10 to 12 characters. There should be letters, which is normal and capital letters, numerals and special characters, etc. The password should not be a word from any literal or name dictionary. It should not be related to your biography, not associated with you in any way. So everyone will agree. But the $1,000,000 question is how to create a strong password, which after all you're creating, you need to remember also. So I'm going to show you a method by which you can make a strong password. Assuming that one of you have asked me this question, like what's your name, where do you live, and what are you doing for a living? My answer will be this. I am Sebastian Edeseri. I live in Kochi. I work with Deloitte for past some years, etc. So what I am going to do is I am going to take first characters of all these words, and it will be looking like this if I make the first characters. So why I am making this is that the answer should be easy for me, and it should, at the same time, while I have put a very simple question here or simple answers here, you should make a probably a different one, which I am coming to you subsequently. Now, if you see this first characters of all these words, it has got 20 letters, has small, capitals, numerals, special characters. Now, this itself is very complex. It can be still made complex by converting maybe one or two more with additional special characters. And maybe you see the second character, A can be very easily thought of and made into a special character of @ S can be made into a $sign, etc. So I made now a really strong password. I still remember like this particular demo for the first time I gave in a high school in Lucknow, and one girl child came with a 128 character password. So I just asked her, how did you make it? Then she told it is the first characters of Hanuman Chalisa. She was from a very pious Hindu family, and their presiding deity at home was Hanumanji. So, so like that, maybe yes, you might be a person who likes Amitabh Bachchan's dialogues. Maybe you can think of something, or some singer, some songs, some proverbs, some prayers, anything it could be. What you need to remember is which is the characters that you have made or converted into special characters.
Sure.
And these days, like you might also need to change the password maybe once in 90 days, etc. at some places. What I suggest is maybe you add one or two numbers at the end and make it something like now like something like 10, 11, 12, 13. So as you change, you can keep on changing this number as well.
Sure.
So it will, but even after all this, you ensure that the whole password you change at least maybe once in 2 years, etc. So that you are totally deviating from the basic password structure. Then coming to internet configurations and wireless routers. Most of us has wireless routers at home. By default, anyone can access to a wireless router unless it is a configuration ID and password has not changed. By default, the user ID of a wireless router is admin, small letters, ADMIN, and password is also admin. In some cases, it is password as user ID and password as password. So criminals know it, and unless you have hardened it, the challenge is that anyone can come and maybe send a threatening mail to somebody, and police will come catching you because the mail has initiated from your internet ID or your internet connection. Download only from trustworthy sources, like unlike many free sites which are full of trojans or maybe malware, etc. And maybe you can also add further, make the connection strong at your home by ensuring a configuration in which only your devices are connected. Your computer and your mobile phone has a unique IMEI and MAC numbers, which if you configure it in such a way that nothing else could be connected. And do not make it easy for others. No, like many of the websites, the moment you sign in, it's all default configuration. So basically change the general or default setting to something different. Then regarding your personal identity documents, etc., never allow that original identity documents to be scanned and send it to someone. It could be made, it could be abused in many ways. I have multiple case studies, but for lack of time, I'm not getting into any of those.
Yes.
So what I generally do is I keep when I'm traveling, or if I need to give a original, give an identity paper, I keep the original with me and share a photocopy with an annotation. I'm going to show you that how the annotation look like very shortly. And even when you have multiple ID cards, for using on the net, you use one such ID which is having the least risk component. So when I say least risk component, generally the electoral ID and all is valid for 20 years, 30 years. Whereas think of another ID which is valid only for 5 years or 2 years. So whichever is going to expire it very quickly. And reasonable security practices under Information Technology Act. Karnika was telling something about it earlier. So you have to ensure that you have to protect your system, especially when you are part of a admin of WhatsApp group or social networking group, etc. Then coming to net banking, and it should be done only in trusted environments. No or minimal apps on the smartphone, because most apps these days available on the internet world is very, very what you call intrusive. They like to pick up the information from your photos, videos, mic, etc. So just try and see. Think of a Uber app which can come to you or track you and come to your place from where you're booking with an accuracy of around 2.5 meters. And the same capability is there for other apps also. So if someone literally want to track you, it can be really tracked. Sure. And avoid the habit of clicking the links, and rather than you try and type it yourself, that could be much, much better or safer. And look for HTTP, HTTPS, etc. These are all considered to be a better or a secure mechanism, while here also there are some sort of challenges we have observed. Right. Then always have a backup plan in case your mobile number, laptop, credit card, digital signature tokens, etc. are lost. Because if I have seen many cases when somebody lost their laptop, they don't know the MAC number, they do not know even the make and model also sometimes. Or if someone asks, okay, I lost my mobile number, what is the IMEI number? That is International Mobile Equipment Identity Number. That's a unique number. Or somebody losing credit card, they don't even remember the whole credit card number. They do not have the phone number to be called for blocking it. Yeah. So all these should be available somewhere. And I was just mentioning about due care while submitting document. This is what you take a image, write or put up an annotation on the image saying that submitted to so-and-so place for so-and-so purpose on so-and-so date. Why I am specially telling this is that, like, even after many terrorist attacks in India, one of the important things that law enforcement agencies do is who called to our neighboring country 10 minutes before the blast and 10 minutes after the blast. So they pick up a lot of mobile numbers. The police come tracking the mobile numbers to the users, and they'll pick them up and tell, give me your mobile. This person may not be even aware But then if you give your identity papers without this sort of annotation, the person in the, I'm sorry, the person who is giving you a connection might even give connection to others using your documents. Unfortunately, we do not have a system of checking like how many mobile numbers are there running against your name, because it is not possible to find out. So many criminals make use of this issue and create mobile phones for abuses subsequently. And then one or two more things like you're on say security questions. Some you have different user IDs and password, and most of the sites offer you a provision for lost password or forgot password option. And most of these forgot password option comes with options like what is your mother's maiden name? Say for example, this is one of the questions. And you know, like many times the criminals are from your own friend circles. That are the people who will be able to know most about it. So if in my case, if I lost some password or somebody wanted to get into my account, one of the password reset question is that I have set is, say, for example, what is your mother's maiden name? They all will know it. So what I have done is, instead of putting her name, I have just put it something like tapioca. It has nothing to do with my mother's name. Or what is the favorite color that you like? Many people will know that I like a particular color from the shirt I am wearing regularly. So rather than putting a color's name, what I may be putting something like passion fruit. So maybe something like that. It need not have anything. Or even creating children's email ID, like you are all parents, maybe you will be wanting to create email IDs for your children. Don't give an ID something like Sania 2012 at gmail.com. Three things you have already given out. Sania means it's a name of the child, and because the Sania is a name for girl child, that child is a girl, and 2012 probably is the year she was born, etc. So I suggest like something like maybe a name of an ice cream, maybe, or something like butterscotch. You put a number and then at gmail.com, etc. So these are all some of the strategies you can be thought of for applying into your life for protecting your children. Thank you.
Lena, at this point, I just feel that while Sebastian has talked about prevention, I need to also discuss the cure. So if you think, because if somebody really falls a victim to this cybercrime, then what one needs to do? Obviously, the first point I would share is that, the particular electronic evidence should be kept quickly, just taken down. And try and see the timestamp, try and see the account and other details, and also need to inform the social media platform if it's a social media platform that has been misused for creation of a fake account or maybe doing something like cyberbullying or other things. There are report abuse buttons in almost all platforms today, so that needs to be also done. And send an email to the public grievance agency of this particular social media platform. And they're supposed to do something within 36 hours, usually remove that particular page or that account itself can be blocked. Then apart from that, police can be informed, so if it's a cyber cell, the police can be informed, and the police needs to, know, so then the complaint has to be registered for that. And for this, either you can, go to the national helpline, which is, the website, which is the cybercrime.gov.in.
Right.
You needn't really report it in hard copy and submit it physically in a police station, but you can just go online and register the complaint there. And there are helplines like 112, which are national helplines. Besides that, there are other lines like 1098 and all, which you can, refer for a child related, issue, especially cyber crimes against children. So these are important, for us to understand. And not only criminal remedies there, that is, you're trying to investigate and punish the offender, but also damages can be claimed. So for example, if it's a credit card fraud that the child has been, suffered, so the information has to go to the credit card company immediately, the bank as well. And there is, immediate need for, you can also sue the bank if the bank is at fault, or the server is at fault. So that is possible by lodging a complaint to the adjudicating authority, which is the Secretary IT in every state. He is authorized under the Information Technology Act to give compensation in case of unauthorizedly stealing of data of children or any parent, for example. whether it's a corporate, body corporate like a bank, which has kept information, but their servers were hacked or something, which has led to unauthorized debits in the particular person's account.
So we have put down a lot of these insights in the handout we're giving to you, Karishma. That's coming to you all. And of course, there are some more points here today. So I will be anyway reflecting it.
We spoke of technical recourse, what we can do technically. We spoke of legal, but all said and done. A lot of times, parents that come to us, they are interested in investigating and finding out, okay, who is behind this and punishing. But the story does not end over here. Like Karnika mentioned in one of the cases of the child, that getting counseled is equally important because these wounds are not visible and then they stay with us for a very long, irrespective of the fact that whether the accuser is caught, he's punished or not. It just does not end over.
Nirali, actually, the whole premise of this webinar is prevention. We are hoping that we can stop it before it happens.
Yeah, prevention, yes, but if it has happened, shy away from seeking help from a counselor, which
a counselor helps
taboo over here.
So that you can iron out that mental agony from the stage A onwards. Sure. That's, of course, a lot of insights your parents' body is getting out here, Karishma. You all have any questions would you like us to ask? Or I think we already well over the time, right? I think.
Dina, this has been very informative. I've received a lot of questions that came in from my members on my WhatsApp group. And while reading through it, it's ironic how much we've already kind of addressed out here. We had a lot of questions that came through on gaming and addiction, and we discussed that. They wanted to know about the laws that were in place, in terms of cybercrime. We've discussed that as well. And a lot of them wanted tips for parents in terms of how to shut off access at different points. And then Sebastian's bought that, highlighted that for us as well. So I think that's been very informative. And, we're certainly looking forward to the docket that you've put together for us, which we will share with our members at a later date. And I think that information will be very handy to them. I'd like to actually ask my vice chair, Ridhima Khanna, to just come and give you all a vote of thanks, because really this has been exceptional and a great learning for all of us.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Karishma. Thank you. Thank you, Leena.
Thank you, Karnika, Nirali, and Sebastian for sharing your expertise, and to Leena for moderating this session perfectly. At Byflow, we don't believe in cutting flowers. We plant a tree in your honor as a gesture of our thank you. We will be sending across green certificates to all of you with details of the same. Thank you to our panelists for this extremely insightful and very relevant session in today's times, and to our members for attending this online session. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Sebastian, Karnika, Nirali.
Thank you, Leena.
More to go. Thank you so much.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Karishma. Thanks so much.
Bye.